The 74th person to be charged in the $300 million Feeding Our Future meal fraud case, Ahmed Naji Sheikh, is the brother of one of the most notorious defendants.
America, the largest COVID fraud scheme in U.S. history, got even bigger. A Kenyan national who helped his brother launder millions of stolen tax dollars overseas while American children went hungry. Ahmednaji Sheikh is accused of helping his brother hide $40 million in fraud proceeds by purchasing real estate in Kenya and operating sham corporations to conceal the money trail. But here's the most infuriating part. While these criminals were buying luxury apartments in Nairobi, the Biden administration was letting this massive fraud continue for nearly 2 years without stopping it.
Tonight, another man charged in the Feeding Our Future meal fraud case. A man federal prosecutors say played a big role in funneling millions of dollars in taxpayer money out of the country.
What is up, guys? Tyson Dela Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Now, I covered this story at the end of July when we hit 50 convictions in this massive fraud scheme. At that time, we were looking at $250 million stolen from programs meant to feed hungry children during C-19. But this new indictment shows the actual international scope of this criminal enterprise and how these fraudsters were moving American taxpayer money halfway around the world. Let me break down the latest indictment because it exposes just how sophisticated this fraud operation really was. Ahmednaji Sheikh, a 28-year-old Kenyan national, has been charged with conspiracy to commit international money laundering for helping his brother Abdiaziz Farah stash millions of dollars in Kenya.
The 74th person to be charged in the $300 million Feeding Our Future meal fraud case, Ahmed Naji Sheikh, is the brother of one of the most notorious defendants, Abdiaziz Farah, who was recently sentenced to 28 years in prison.
Now, here's what makes this case so outrageous. Farah was the leader of what prosecutors called the Empire Group, the most successful criminal organization within this massive fraud scheme. This guy stole over $40 million from programs designed to feed hungry children. And instead of keeping that money in America where it could potentially be recovered, he shipped it overseas to his brother in Kenya. Text messages between the brothers are absolutely damning. On July 3rd, 2021, Farah texts she, "You are going to be the richest 25-year-old in Ansala." She responded, "I love you so much." They're literally celebrating stealing money from American children.
Farah was convicted with a group of others of stealing $50 million of taxpayer money. Now his brother Sheikh is accused of helping him launder that money. Text messages between the brothers included in the indictment show $138,000 cash, $270,000 cash, and a money order for $300,000 sent from Farah to Sheikh in Kenya.
The evidence in this case reads something out of a crime movie. She was sending his brother photos of massive amounts of cash and documenting every transaction like he was running a legitimate business. Let me walk you through the money trail. August 29th, 2021, she sent Farah a photo of $138,000 in cash. December 9th, 2021, she sent a photo of a banker's box filled with $270,000 in cash. On December 16th, 2021, she sent photos of a receipt for $300,000 in money transfers. On December 27th, 2021, she texted that he had received $1,287,000 in just a few days.
The indictment says Sheikh helped Farah buy an apartment building and invest in other real estate in Kenya, all with money that was supposed to feed kids during the pandemic.
Think about this for a second. In December 2021, while American families were struggling with inflation and supply chain issues, these criminals were moving over $1.2 million in stolen taxpayer money to Kenya in a matter of days. They used this money to purchase an apartment building in South Sea neighborhood in Nairobi, one of the most expensive areas in Kenya, located right next to Nairobi National Park. They also bought land in Madeira Town, a city on the border of Somalia and Ethiopia. This wasn't just money laundering. This was building a criminal empire with American taxpayer money. But the money laundering was just part of She's criminal scheme. This guy was also running immigration fraud operations to get himself into the United States permanently.
In addition to Sheikh's charges, the indictment states he lied in his attempts to immigrate to the U.S., claiming he's unmarried in his application for the green card lottery, when in fact he married Farah's sister-in-law 3 years ago so she could sponsor his residency.
Here's how this scheme worked. October 2021, Farhi used his fraud proceeds to purchase a $575,000 townhome in Burnsville, Minnesota. His sister-in-law, identified as an individual SD, moved into the townhome. Then on December 30th, 2021, she married the individual labeled as SD in Nairobi, Kenya. Individual SD is a naturalized U.S. citizen who worked at one of the companies that sponsored Farhi's fraudulent participation in the federal child nutrition program. So she was already part of the fraud scheme, and now she's helping she immigrate in the United States with a sham marriage. But here's where she got greedy and stupid. On June 9th, 2023, individual SD filed a petition to sponsor she's immigration as her husband. But then on November 7th, 2024, she applied for a diversity immigration visa lottery, the green card lottery, and claimed he was unmarried. So this guy was simultaneously trying to immigrate as a married person through his wife's sponsorship and as an unmarried person through the lottery system. He was literally running multiple immigration fraud schemes at the same time. Now let me put this in proper political context because this is important. The Feeding Our Future fraud scheme ran from March 2020 through January 2022, almost entirely during the Biden administration. The scale of this fraud is absolutely staggering.
Federal prosecutors are calling it a milestone mark. 50 convictions have now played out in the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. Tonight, we're digging deeper into these latest developments in this $250 million ruse and the Rochester connection to it all.
We're talking about $250 million stolen from federal C-19 relief funds that were supposed to help feed children during the pandemic. That's $250 million that could have actually helped American families during one of the most difficult periods in recent history. But instead of proper oversight and accountability, the Biden administration allowed this fraud to continue for nearly 2 years. The Minnesota Education Department, which is responsible for overseeing C-19 funds, completely failed their duty. A 2024 legislative audit concluded that MDE's inadequate oversight of Feeding Our Futures created opportunities for fraud.
Remember, this fraud scheme stems from federal COVID-19 funds intended to help feed children. In today's announcement on the 50 convictions, Joseph Thompson, that's the acting U.S. attorney for Minnesota, saying in part, quote, "For years, these elite federal agents and forensics accountants have tracked stolen money, cut through layers of deceit, and exposed a sprawling network of shell companies and fake meal claims."
The Biden administration expanded the USDA program that allowed restaurants to run federal-funded food distribution sites without proper oversight. They created a system ripe for fraud and then failed to monitor it effectively. To understand how massive this fraud scheme was, let me break down the numbers for you. This wasn't just a bad few actors. This was an organized criminal enterprise that exploited American generosity during a national crisis. 50 convictions achieved so far as of the July coverage. 74 defendants now charged with she's indictment. $250 million stolen from federal child nutrition programs. Only 3% of the money actually spent on food for children. $75 million have been recovered so far by authorities.
This pandemic-era scheme was tied to an expanded USDA program that allowed restaurants to run federally funded food distribution sites for children in need. The restaurants needed to have a nonprofit organization as a sponsor, aka Feeding Our Future.
The scheme worked like this. Criminals would claim they were operating food distribution sites for children in need. They would submit fake rosters with made-up names and fake expense reports to justify massive federal payments. They were buying luxury cars, expensive jewelry, and real estate.
Its founder and executive director, Amy Bach, was convicted for her role back in May. A total of 70 people have been charged in this case, 50 now being convicted, with the 3 latest convictions coming in the past couple weeks.
Amy Bach, the founder and executive director of Feeding Our Futures, was the ringleader who made this entire scheme possible. She was supposed to be overseeing legitimate food distribution, but instead, she was facilitating the largest C-19 fraud scheme in American history. This fraud wasn't limited to Minneapolis. It spread throughout Minnesota, including Rochester, where criminals claimed they were serving thousands of meals to children every single day.
Back to those restaurants now serving as distribution sites. From late 2020 through 2022, Rochester's Bravo restaurant claimed it was serving between 2,000 and 3,000 daily meals to children under the guise of feeding our future.
Think about that for a second. That's more meals than most school districts serve. But it was all fake. They weren't feeding anybody. The 4 individuals involved in the Rochester operation have all pled guilty and been convicted of federal charges. They admit to using federal dollars to pay for personal expenses instead of feeding children. According to court records, Bravo restaurant alone received approximately $4.3 million in fraudulent funds. So one restaurant in Rochester stole over $4 million that was supposed to feed hungry children during the pandemic. Multiply that across dozens of fake operations throughout Minnesota, and you start to understand the massive scale of this criminal enterprise. Now here's what makes Sheikh's case particularly infuriating. The money he helped launder to Kenya is essentially gone forever. Acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson made this clear at Farah's sentencing.
At Farah's sentencing, acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson pointed out the government can't get back any of the cash sent to Kenya or the property purchased there, and Farah didn't voluntarily give it back.
The sense I got was he's sorry he got caught.
Meaning Farah was only sorry that he got caught, not sorry for stealing from American children. This is why international money laundering is so devastating. Once these criminals move stolen American tax dollars overseas, especially to countries without strong extradition treaties, that money is essentially lost forever.
Sheikh is currently in Kenya and not expected to appear in court in Minnesota anytime soon.
So while American taxpayers are out millions of dollars, she is living comfortably in Kenya on luxury real estate purchased with stolen American money. This is the real cost of the Biden administration's failed oversight during the C-19 pandemic. America, the charging of the 74th defendant in the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme shows this criminal enterprise was even more sophisticated and international than we initially understood. What started as a program to feed hungry children during C-19 became the largest pandemic fraud scheme in U.S. history, with tentacles reaching all the way to Kenya. The fact that Ahmed Naji was able to help his brother launder $40 million in stolen taxpayer money to Kenya, where it'll never be recovered, is a damning indictment of the Biden administration's complete failure to provide proper oversight during the pandemic. While American families were struggling with lockdowns, inflation, and economic uncertainty, these criminals were building luxury real estate empires with stolen American tax dollars. The 28-year prison sentence for Fahi sends a strong message, but it doesn't bring back the $250,000 stolen from programs meant to help American children. The 50 convictions we achieved so far is just the beginning. We still have 24 more defendants to prosecute, including she, who may never face justice in the American courtroom. This case perfectly illustrates why proper government oversight matters. When you expand federal programs without adequate safeguards and accountability measures, you create opportunities for massive fraud. The Minnesota Department of Education's inadequate oversight didn't just cost taxpayers money, it enabled an international criminal enterprise that enriched foreign nationals with American tax dollars. The marriage fraud scheme she was running shows these criminals weren't just stealing our money. They were trying to immigrate to America permanently so they can continue their criminal activity on U.S. soil. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.